All right, here we go. Continuing with the doctor's opinion, page xxvii. Of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his physical craving for liquor, and this often requires a definite hospital procedure before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all, and once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. So I'm going to stop there and open it up for discussion. I'm going to point out a few things that were pointed out to me. So number one being the definite hospital procedure detox. So we need to have a definite detox, some sort of treatment for the doomed alcoholic that has DTs. And then I've highlighted, underlined, and starred these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. So we must have total abstinence. I'm going to open it up because I know there's lots of other things that you want to say. Jeanette?
Raised my hand when we were voting.
Oh, sorry. Dottie?
Hi, everybody. Dottie, alcoholic. So in my book, I have that first paragraph that Kim read, we believe. That's like step one. And on the other side of the paragraph, I have written, craving always referred to physical. And after 21 to 30 days, the craving is no longer physical. It becomes a mental obsession. And also, it was highly unusual that a medical professional, would recommend spirituality, like Dr. Silkworth has, because science and religion back then didn't really mix very well. I can't speak for now, but back then, and that's all I have on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Dottie. Anyone else wish to speak on these paragraphs about the allergy? Charlene?
I just wanted to talk about the in nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. That part was so important for me to get. I'm assuming that's step 2, and it's an absolute must. Like, you have to be grounded in a power greater than yourselves. Just that word grounded, it comes from, the foundation that we must establish in these steps 1, 2, and 3. And reading this again, like I always say in this meeting, it's just of utmost importance to know the history and to understand what the beginning of this whole book manifests and how it manifests into your life. So I just thought that was really cool.
Thank you. And also on that, it says recreate our lives. We're not going back to the same old life. I was told by my sponsor originally, nothing changes as nothing changes. So we need to recreate the life because the one we were living wasn't working. Mel.
Yeah, I've just got above that where it finishes difficult to solve. The last bit of that paragraph, I've just got that it shows the full extent of the powerlessness and unmanageability.
Yes, exactly. And it's the human condition, right? Lots of people have problems, but we are not able to get past them, and they pile up on us, and we can't solve those problems. Anyone else wish to speak on those paragraphs? All right, we will move on. Oh, Yvonne got it in nick of time.
got here is that the part that says their reliance upon things human, I've got trust in there. And I don't know if that's what they're talking about, but that's kind of the way I took it. Because I know I lost trust in all people. So that's all. Just that piece right there.
Thank you so much. It also indicates that human power won't help us solve our problems, as it leads into needing a power greater than ourselves. All right. If any feel that as psychiatrists directing a hospital for alcoholics, we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us a while on the firing line. See the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become part of their daily work and even of their sleeping moments. And the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. We feel, after many years of experience, that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up amongst them. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it's injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, discontented, unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, the phenomenon of craving develops. They pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful, with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. So again, we talk about the altruistic movement now growing up. So that's the selfless movement, the fellowship amongst these men where they want to help each other. We're talking about that sensation where although we know it hurts us, we keep seeking it. We get that sense of ease and comfort, and then we're always shooting to hit that mark, and we never quite hit it again. And we keep having that phenomenon of craving and that spree, that hopeless, powerless cycle. Bev.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Bev, alcoholic. Did I get unmuted? Not yet.
Yes.
Okay. Am I unmuted or muted?
Unmuted.
Okay, great. Bev, alcoholic from Richmond, Virginia. I love that one paragraph, the second one that you read, and men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by the alcohol. Well, that was absolutely what I drank for. Not the first time I drank, not the first time I drank. I don't remember that, but I remember my first drunk. And it was Purple Passion, and it was mixed with grain alcohol. And as I was drinking it, I was guzzling it because I had no idea what it would do. And the downing of it gave me that sense of ease and comfort, and the rest of it was all a blur and a mess. And I didn't drink for a very long time. But when I did start drinking again, it was because of I was drinking to cover up the way I felt. I wanted to change the way I felt. And I would continue just like it says in the book, over and over again until I did not recognize the true from the false. That's how I ended up. I did not have any idea whether I was speaking the truth or not, and most of the time it was not. And yes, always emerged remorseful. I'll never do it again. I won't do it tomorrow. And again, I would go over and over and over and do it again and again. Thanks.
Thank you, Bev. And thank you to Catherine for putting the definition of impunity. No consequences, can't differentiate true from false. So thank you so much, Nikki.
Hi, Nikki, alcoholic, calling from Oahu, Hawaii. The thing that struck out to me here, and I will say that I right now only have 12 days sober. But the sentence that says they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false, to them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. And I started to realize the last, 6 to 9 months of my drinking that I did not feel normal until I had one bottle of wine. And, then there's more after that. But it had to be at least one bottle for me to feel normal. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, and congratulations. Laura C.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm an alcoholic. I love this paragraph. Of course, probably all of us have it circled, underlined, highlighted, everything, because it so eloquently and beautifully describes that weird, twisted thinking that was my normal. It was so my normal. And I have a couple of notes down here, too, that when it says men and women drink because they like the effect produced by alcohol, I think that's a gross understatement. I put love next to it. But also, when it goes on to kind of describe what happens, to my thinking and to my mind, they kind of go on to describe how I am when I'm not drinking, right? I am restless, irritable, and discontented until, again, I can pour my, liquid comfort into me the only time that I feel okay in my own skin. And when somebody pointed that out to me, I have made another note down there that says alcohol affects me 2 times, when I'm drinking it and when I'm not, right? So when I'm not drinking it is when I'm restless, irritable, and discontented. And I can't even be in my own skin, and I need that relief right away. And so this disease is like, if I'm not drinking alcohol, I still have it. I'm an alcoholic unless I'm treating those symptoms, and need a spiritual awakening to do that. So I loved it when a few people pointed that out. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Pico.
Hey you guys, Pico Alcoholic. So I wanted to note something cool from the manuscript. Yeah, instead of altruistic, it originally said community. And when the editors went in to fix what Bildo was doing, they said community is too light a word to describe what you men are doing. And then the editors here are being sensitive to using language that is respectful to the dimension of the seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. The use of the word altruistic here also is consistent with an earlier edit in the doctor's opinion, adding an altruistic plane that notes involvement in the community of recovery as well as the spiritual practice of the 12 steps. So I thought that was cool. And then the only other thing I wanted to say, frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. This message can interest and hold those alcoholics with must have depth and weight. Basically just like, for me, what that meant was like, I went to a lot of doctors who told me that I needed to stop drinking the way I was drinking because I was hurting my body, but that didn't have depth and weight. And it wasn't until I came into AA and read the doctor's opinion that it was the first time someone sat down and explained to me what my alcoholism meant. It wasn't good enough to just tell me the frothy emotional appeal of like, it's sucking what you're doing and you're hurting yourself. That wasn't going to help. I had to have depth and weight. For some reason, I had this huge reliance on medicine, and when I saw the word doctor, I was like, oh, I can get down with this. A doctor's telling me what's wrong with me. Okay, I can get down with that. So, thanks.
Thank you. And that would also include the emotional appeals from family, right? Like the endless appeals from our family and friends. Charlene.
So the part where it says this is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. For me, that was my rock bottom. And also my spiritual experience was tied in with that because I was relapsing. I was a chronic relapser. I convinced myself that it was all okay until God was like, put a stop to it. And again, just the validation of there has to be a psychic change. Something has to change. And what is that going to be? Well, that's going to be your absolute rock bottom. And then what are you going to do from there once that spiritual experience has hit you? The other thing, I forget the lady that was just speaking, but it just reminded me that it's so important to describe to your higher power how you are feeling. And essentially you're doing that for yourself. So whether that be in the morning, whether that be, when you have these feelings stirring up inside of you that are, causing you to go take another drink, it is so, so important. Describe how you're feeling in that moment to your higher power. And essentially it's going to tell yourself and your psyche, something's not right here, something's going on. And I think that as an alcoholic, we have to do that continuously. And that's why we do this moment by moment, day by day. It's the only way that we're going to survive this and live, in my opinion.
Thank you. Annette?
Hi, good morning. Annette, alcoholic. The part that this amazing shares, by the way. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. And the true from the false right there, that really struck home. Because, first of all, I used to get up in the morning, after drinking throughout the night. And I used to look out my window and I used to see people going to work and I was totally amazed, that, because I used to question, I said, are they drunk just like I am? Are they getting high? Did they have to have some drinks? Just like me. I thought everybody had to do it. That was my truth from the false. There's a bunch of normies out there, and I thought everybody had to do this. And to them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. And that's what it was to me. It became my norm, and the hell that I was living in, it was my normal. And so I hear in these rooms that is, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Well, I got comfortable with being uncomfortable with just having to have drink in me or alcohol in me all the time. Then like to jump to after they succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomena of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. That was my first invisible line, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe there were other ones, but I failed to see the warnings, and I didn't know about AA at the time when I was going through all this, because I went into my first rehab in I believe it was December or January of 1986, and my life was horrible. I drank for a lot of years. I did a lot of stuff. I did drugs as well, because when I was getting too drunk, I would go to the coke to get me up, and then I'd be too up, so I'd go back to the alcohol, and it was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And this was my life. This was my life until I had that entire psychic change, which is the spiritual experience. I thank God that in spite of me, and I just heard Charlene say, we have to do this all the time. It's an everyday thing. And I failed to do this all the time. And I got a little bit, I went backwards, a lot of steps backwards, but thank God that he carried me and he brought me back, and I'm back pretty active now, trying to get busy with newcomers, and
Thank you so much, Annette. We have to keep it on the page we're on, please, and thank you. Leslie, on this page, please.
Hi there. I was just going to mention, I don't think I heard it, but that entire psychic change can only come about with doing the steps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, when I first came in and, I got right down to business because I was so sick, but I remember it was sort of like leaving a meeting one day and walking up the street like I had sort of like a kick in my step. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening, but something's happening, right? Like I felt better. My anxiety level had gone, and the people around me were kind of, the head kind of turns like they're like, what's going on with you? You seem to be, but that's because I was working the program and doing the steps. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. And we should also discuss that first paragraph that talks about, we feel a psychiatrist directing a hospital that we might be sentimental. You got to remember that some people might think, oh, they're taking an easier, softer way with their patients. But meanwhile, they'd seen this hopeless alcoholic day in and day out, and they were out of ideas. They had tried every method to help these men and women. And so it's worth noting that, these doctors weren't just sentimental saps. It's that they were just as hopeless on how to help the alcoholic as the alcoholic was hopeless. All right, one more before on this page, Joanne.
Hi, everyone. So this is just my opinion, but sometimes when I hear the comment, the only way to get the psychic change is from doing the steps. For me, when I have sponsees that are brand new, it's like, I need to do the steps. I need to do the steps. And I say, well, you are on step 1. It's not like you have to go through all 12 to have the psychic change. You have to go to 1. And from my experience, my psychic change happened on my first meeting at the very end when this young woman said, can you not drink for today and meet me at a meeting tomorrow? I will be there. And I did not drink. I did not drink because at that point I had begun to take my first step, was realizing, and that's what got me to the meeting, that I couldn't stop drinking and I needed something beyond me to help me to stop drinking. So I love the steps. I just want to sometimes say the steps isn't a one entity. You can't go from step 1 to step 12. You have to go through the steps. And so for people that are brand new, if you are here and you're sober and at this big book step study, and we will go through the steps, but just don't worry about, I'm not having a psychic change in that and assuming that you have to go through all 12 steps. You just have to go through one at a time, one day at a time, one step at a time, and your life will change with the psychic change. That's it.
Thank you so much. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. It's always an individual experience. All right, no more hands up, so let's carry on. On the other hand, as strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. Men have cried out to me in sincere, despairing appeal, "Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me." Faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Although he gives all that is in him, it often is not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, we physicians must admit that we have made little impression on the problem as a whole. Many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. All right, hands are up. Let's stop there and start discussion. Flo, you're unmuted.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just wanted to comment on the psychic change, which is the same as the spiritual experience. And if you read Appendix 2, it tells you exactly what a spiritual experience is, and quite often it's the educational variety. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Pico.
Hey, Kim. I wanted to know what you guys' opinion, or what you gals' opinion is when they say require a few simple rules. Like, I always thought that's the steps, right? Okay, just want to clarify that. The other thing I just want to note, I can't produce my own psychic change. I need to be reminded of that. In my third year of sobriety, still, like, my self-help bookcase is not going to produce the psychic change. I heard the speaker once say he went to every single church. He was dipped, dug, spayed, and neutered, and he still couldn't get the psychic change from just going to different kinds of religions and stuff. So just a reminder to myself right now, I can't. God can. Thank you.
Thank you. Bev? You're good.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just was reminded the A, B, and C at the end of the 12 steps that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. That means that we have got to find a spiritual connection at some point with our higher power in order for that psychic change to happen. That's got to happen. And it is, for me, I had many spiritual experiences along the way, working the 12 steps, many. A really prominent one was at the third step. Of course, at the first step when I picked up my white chip again, hopefully for the last time. But as I went through the steps and found little things happening in my life, like when I saw the third step promises and things like that, they were my spiritual experiences. But it's like, I think Flo just said, if you read that appendix, the spiritual awakening or the complete psychic change happens after we have completed the steps. Well, for me, I don't want to say for everybody, it's for me. It happened after I completed all the steps and started sponsoring other women. That's when it all really clicked. And yes, these psychiatrists felt helpless and still can today. The only thing that's going to get through this alcoholic brain is working with another alcoholic, whether I'm sponsoring that person or that person sponsoring me. That's what I need to stay sober. And the rules that they're talking about are the suggestions that our sponsors give us. Whether they're the steps or not, they're the suggestions. They're the things that I have to do on a daily basis to stay sober. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to add into that, like, I have spiritual experiences all of the time, working with newcomers, seeing the light come on in them is a spiritual experience. And sometimes when I'm speaking, it's a moving spiritual experience where I realize things and things come out of my mouth that I've never thought of before. And so, we continue to grow on that spiritual basis by this program. Jeanette?
Hi, everyone. Jeanette, alcoholic. What really popped out at me is once the psychic change has occurred and they suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire to alcohol. I think once, the introduction of the steps, the introduction to the recovery program, and finding her own spirituality, the obsession is lifted. No longer have the desire. And last, many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. When I was in an outpatient, there was a gal that they actually had on medication to help her find some type of recovery. And even though she was on this medication, and knew she was going to get extremely ill if she drank anyway. And, that's the sadness of trying to do recovery, I think, on our own. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Wendy?
Hi, I'm Wendy. I'm an alcoholic. This paragraph always gets me. Men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal. Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me. Now, as an alcoholic, I've been in that position, and I've had a solution there for me. As a sponsor, I've had alcoholics come to me with that desperation. I have kids, I have this, I have that, or I'm going to die if I continue to go on. And they're so desperate, and I have a solution. And I always think about Dr. Silkworth when I read that, and just think how helpless he must have felt, just utterly helpless, to all those years that he worked with alcoholics before Alcoholics Anonymous, to have these people and to not have a real solution for them. And just how much I admire him. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much. Dottie?
Hi, everybody. Dottie, alcoholic. I was trying to keep my hand raised when we were on the last paragraph, but I kept grabbing the work mouse instead of the recovery mouse. But anyway, so in that first paragraph, like this page that we're on, it's the cycle that starts the steps, more or less, out of the doctor's opinion. And I just wanted to share that. Like, I have to go back to the first paragraph before I can talk about what I want to talk about in the second paragraph. After they succumb the desire again, which is the mental obsession, right? And then it says, so many do. And the phenomenon of craving, which is the physical craving or physical obsession, and obsession is an idea that comes over all other ideas, and it just consumes you, and then, and as many mentioned, the psychic change is this spiritual awakening. And I couldn't have my spiritual awakening until those cravings and those obsessions were gone. But in the paragraph that we just read, again, it's mentioned once a psychic change has occurred, which is the spiritual awakening. And then it says, he finds himself easily to control his desire. Okay. And that desire is the removal of the obsessions. And then he's able to focus on a few simple rules, which are the steps. And it just, as I look back, it's like, that's me. That's exactly how my recovery has been going, exactly as it's written in the doctor's opinion. So, and that's all I have to share on that.
Thank you. Whoops. Thank you so much, Dottie. Lauren? Lauren?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I sure can. Go ahead on this page.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Lauren, alcoholic. Kim, thank you for your service very much. This big book study has really started me on the right path again. The doctor's opinion is for me, one of the most important parts of this book, for me. And the reason being is because when I had struggled with this program for a while, and I was in and out, and, I would have old timers tell me I'm not getting the first step. And I'd be like, what are they talking about? I come to meetings. I know I can't drink, but yet I was still drinking. And for me, what happened was, until I fully respected and understood that my body is different than my girlfriend who can have a glass of wine, until I really understood that, and now I respect my allergy, and I have a very healthy fear of it. And the fact that I have that makes me stay away from a drink. Like, I know, it's the first drink that gets you drunk. Like, these were things that I didn't understand when I was in and out. And, my first psychic change happened when on my first meeting back over 5 years ago, some guy told me, he's like, well, why don't you just ask God not to drink today? And I swear I heard it for 6 years, but for some reason it was an aha moment. And once he said that, and I didn't even like this guy, to be honest with you. Once he said that to me, it's like my mind just opened up. And trust me, I heard it so many times because I struggled with this program for 6 years. And now, and when I work with other women, I ingrain this in their mind that we have an allergy. And for me, it starts like this. They say the relapse starts before you actually pick up the drink. And for me, that's when my mind starts obsessing. I can just have one. It's okay this time. You've been without a drink for 6 months. Like, that's how it starts. And like they say, that's when you need to stop it. Because once I got to the point where my body was physically craving it, even though I did not have it in 6 months, I was beyond help. Nobody was going to stop me, you know. And for me, then when I pick up the drink, then I can't stop because the mind tells me I need more. My body physically tells me I need more. And I have this, I'm out of control. So I'm really happy that we're on this. You know, I just got home from work, but I'm always listening in. And I kind of have this whole session memorized because, like I said, it's my favorite part. So that's all I have. Did I say it wrong?
No, you're good. It was a question. It was a question from the chat. You're good. But yeah, my spiritual awakening was an aha moment, just like you described, right? It was like that whoa, right? That was my moment. Charlene, quickly, one more on this page, or last one.
Yep. I just wanted to quickly say, you know, we have to come into this understanding that how are we approaching this book? You know, it's like we're living this every day. So this book is kind of alive for me. And the following the few simple rules, what stood out for me was like, when I was in rehab and just like, you know, following simple things, sorry, I'm trying to go really quickly. The most important part for me is how this doctor is saying he's feeling inadequate. He's admitting that little impression was made upon the problem as a whole, and the fact that many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach, and that's therapies like, you know, talk therapy, art therapy, all these different therapies that they try to place on us. They're not going to work for everybody. They definitely didn't work for me, and now I'm in it and I'm doing this and I'm reading this book as a live thing in my life, and that's what's working finally.
Thank you. Okay, I have an analogy for the allergy and the obsession and the mind and the body, and Joe laughs his butt off, but it will work here because you guys will understand. Most of you have had kids. So we have a baby and the baby's really cute. We instantly forget that childbirth is super painful and does a terrible toll on our body. And then we're out and about and we see the cutest little baby and we're in love and it smells good. And we're like, I think it's going to be a great idea to have a baby. I want a baby. And then so you go and you get pregnant and then all of a sudden it's 38 weeks and you're like, oh crap, I got to deliver this baby. Well, that's the injurious. Like we get that craving. We want the baby. We want the comfort. We want the love. It's great, but we forget that it's going to hurt like heck and rip us apart. So that is my little female analogy of the craving and obsession. So we've got the craving for the alcohol and the mental obsession of the mind where we forget it's going to hurt or we think it's going to be different this time. All right, let's keep reading. I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. I have had many men who have had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal which was to be settled on a certain date favorably to them. They took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all other interests, so that the important appointment was not met. These men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, which cause men to make supreme sacrifice rather than to continue to fight. The classification of alcoholics seems most difficult and in much detail is outside the scope of this book. There are, of course, the psychopaths who are emotionally unstable. We are all familiar with this type. They are always going on the wagon for keeps. They are over remorseful and make many resolutions but never a decision. There is the type of man who is unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his brand or his environment. There is the type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, that he can take the drink without danger. There is the manic depressive type who is, perhaps, the least understood by his friends and about whom a whole chapter could be written. Then there are types entirely normal in every respect except in the effect alcohol has upon them. They are often able, intelligent, friendly people. All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy, which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have is to suggest entire abstinence. This immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate. Much has been written pro and con, but among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. So we talk about this allergy, the phenomenon of craving in depth, as well as the different types of alcoholics on this page. So for me, when I ingest alcohol of any form, it does trigger that phenomenon of craving where I cannot control how much I ingest. And I certainly can't stop once I start. And, you know, those sociopaths who are emotionally unstable, well, I usually date those people. But myself, I identify with the entirely normal person who is often able, intelligent, and friendly, right? But when I ingest any alcohol, I trigger that phenomenon of craving. And before it was explained to me, you know, I didn't have a problem with alcohol, and I knew I kind of had some alcoholic tendencies, but when that allergy was explained to me, it was an aha moment. I went, that is me. All right, hands up who would like to speak on this page. I cannot believe no one wants to speak on this page. Is the button broken? All right, there we go. Grace, start us off.
Okay. Hi, I'm Grace. The paragraph that really I identified very strongly with was about the type of alcoholic who is unwilling to admit that he cannot drink. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his brand, his environment. There's the type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period, he can take a drink. I went through that for the longest time. I tried to change brands. I tried to change the size of the glass, how many ice cubes I used. I had all these ridiculous things. I went through Lent, my father's house, because he would make us all these great drinks at Easter before dinner, and you know, we'd all drink because we were just a whole family of alcoholics, and I couldn't figure that out. And then instead of saying, well, look, I could not stop for that period of time and be cured, the next year I would say, well, guess what? I'm not going to have hard liquor. I'm just going to have wine. Or I'm just going to have, then it was, I'm just going to stop on weekends, you know? I mean, it got, instead of saying to myself, you've got a real problem here, I would still try to fit it into what I wanted and control it. It was nonsense, absolutely nonsense. So I do understand those different types, and what it would do to me, you know. And it wasn't until, you know, I finally got to that point of desperation, like other people do, that I realized, you know, more than that had to take place. I didn't know the word psychic change, but that's what I needed. I mean, there was no way I could keep that kind of thing up and ever control it, stop.
Grace, we're losing you on that one. I apologize. Valerie?
Hi, I'm Valerie, alcoholic from Vancouver. Thank you, Kimberly. I've attended many of your meetings, but have never shared. And this is my first time in the Big Book study. You know, I was sitting here thinking as some of the readings that, you know, like there are different levels. And I was that person that was, that appeared very normal when I wasn't drinking or drugging. And a woman that I got some drugs from, she actually said, you know, Val, you're the only person that I could actually bring home to visit my family. You know, but when I was partying, doing the alcohol, and everything was everything balanced. The drugs, you know, what I needed to maintain, even though I was altered. And so, but when I was drinking, life wasn't good, you know. And even though it was like binge drinking and affecting relationships, and I just know here the only relief is entire abstinence. And I realized only a few years ago, I've been in recovery for a number of years, one day at a time, that I got a job in a state psychiatric hospital, a job. So I actually sobered up in a psych hospital, but I was staff. So it really pounded it into me. That helped me, along with the big book, to get sober and stay sober by seeing how it affected people in a more severe way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Laura.
Oh, hi. Thank you, Kimberly. Laura, alcoholic. The thing that comes to mind in reading all of this is, you know, for years before I found my way here and into recovery, you know, and now even probably my great superpowers are rationalization and denial. So I need to be able to see, I need to hear from these guys all of the different kinds of alcoholics. You know, I'm going to try and find my way out of there. I'm going to try and find the place where I don't fit so that I can therefore call myself non-alcoholic and not have to do this stuff, you know. So when I read this, you know, I'm wanting to fit myself in there, but in fact, all in various ways fits for me, and it's incredibly helpful for me at that fatal dose of alcoholism that I need for a step one to be able to not find my way out of, you know, the way I'm going to weasel my way out and say, not me, I'm different, and I wasn't that bad, and, you know, I made it to work, or whatever it is, and I found that in here, and that was so important for me to read. Thanks.
Totally. I wasn't me. I didn't have a problem. You had a problem. Always. And I'm only going to drink white wine, not red wine. And then the white wine was gone, and there went the red wine too. Joanne.
Yeah, you know, I'm just talking about the physical addiction. I just wanted to control everything based on what I thought. And I ignored my body. I ignored the signals, the thing, you know, like just stop drinking, you know. You wake up feeling like crap the next day, and then by the end of the day, you're drinking again. But I just wanted to quickly say, if you have any doubt that it's not a physical, in early recovery, God bless the old timers that would dump candy out on the table and say, if you get squirrely and you feel like taking a drink, have some sugar, and it would work. After, you know, a year or more, then that's just denial. But in the beginning, you know, that's that physical kind of connection, that it's not, you know, what my childhood, what my past was, is that I had a physical withdrawal craving and physical reaction, and the sugar helped in early sobriety, not in long term. That's getting honest about other things. That's it.
Thank you so much. And it's always the candy. Always. Dottie?
Hi, everybody. Dottie, alcoholic. So, you know, for me in these paragraphs, it was the delusion. Like, I was so delusional that I had a problem. You know, and it's also written on the side of my book how we as alcoholics are different from each other. Well, I didn't think I was different from anybody else because I had a high tolerance and I could just drink more than anybody else. But I want to share what Jamie wrote in the chat, and it kind of, you know, caught me. And she wrote, the mind can't control the start and the body can't control the stop. And that was another one of my delusions. And she hit it out of the park with that statement. And, you know, it was just, you know, the delusion. It's kind of like once we get sober and we're going on, then the denial kicks in that, you know, it wasn't as bad as it is, it's this and that. And, yeah, so I, you know, looking back at it, I was a very delusional person because I had a high tolerance, more so than the guys that I drank with. But anyway, thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you. Oh yeah, I could drink them boys under the table. Carol in Calgary.
Hi, my name is Carol and I am an alcoholic. Gosh, I remember, it seems like 100 years ago when I lived in Ottawa, I used to go to Hull at night to drink. There was a time when because I would drink, all kinds of hard liquors, but I made a commitment to myself to start drinking Dubonnet on the rocks so it would slow me down, which, if you've ever had it, it's awful. So it's like, and it didn't last very long, but those words seem to jump out at me off the page, because while I could handle 2 jobs, I was always on the go. But once I got in that environment and had a drink or two, I've always had that attitude, like, you're going for a drink after work doesn't make sense to me. Like, why bother with just a drink? And people that can leave a half a glass of wine on the bar and leave the room and go home is beyond me. I've been sober for over 30 years, and while I love the sound of the ducks honking as they fly over my house, I still think that favorite sound to me was always the cork coming out of the wine bottle, because that meant that there was still a whole bottle of wine. And some years later, once I moved to Calgary, I worked in an oil and gas firm and saw all these engineering students working in the summer and then getting their degrees, and I had considered going back to school, and so the company got me over to see a psychologist, went through a whole bunch of tests, and for whatever reason, whatever he saw or heard from me, he started dealing into other things, and he started talking about how my behaviors of the way I was brought up, why didn't I go in a really negative direction? Like, I seemed to have problem with booze, but I was still a good girl and understood the difference between right and wrong and how to keep a job. My bottom is certainly not a low bottom. In comparison, it was still a bottom. But I just have to say, just reading those words, I can still hear myself in my head. I'm going to have a Dubonnet tonight instead. But that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Susan, finish us off on this page, please.
Hey everyone, I'm Susan Alcoholic, and I'm grateful to be sitting at a big book study today. It says about the classifications of alcoholics. Now, this was written by the doctor, so it's kind of like we could probably get a bunch more other classifications in there just to, make ourselves unique or whatever. But I'm a culmination of all of it. I'm like a mutt. And but what it says on here is all these and many others have one symptom in common, and I look for the commonality, is that they cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. And for all cases, the only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. So no matter what classification I am in, and I mean, I could come up with a bunch, but I find the common denominator being that I can't stop drinking once I start. Once I put that drink in my system, it's all bets are off. And so for me, if I don't drink, then I'm not going to get drunk, entire abstinence. And maybe sometimes I just have to keep that simple thought in my head rather than trying to find the back door and the excuses or whatever. And it's worked for me for a little while. So I'm really, really grateful to be here and be at a big book study. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So we're going to continue page xxxi, finish it off. What is the solution? Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partially recognized his features, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left me. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol. When I need a mental uplift, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. The patient had made his own diagnosis and, deciding his situation hopeless, had hidden in a deserted barn determined to die. He was rescued by a searching party and in desperate condition brought to me. Following his physical rehabilitation, he had a talk with me in which he frankly stated he thought that treatment a waste of effort, unless I could assure him, which no one ever had, that in the future he would have the willpower to resist the impulse to drink. His alcoholic problem was so complex and his depression so great that we felt his only hope would be through what we then called moral psychology, and we doubted if even that would have any effect. However, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. He has not had a drink for a great many years. I see him now and then, and he is as fine specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through, and though perhaps he may come to scoff, he may remain to pray. William D. Silkworth, M.D. So a few things that I would personally like to point out on this page. Number one, highlighted, underlined, circled, and starred, what is the solution? And then we see those first three parts of that first big paragraph. You can break it down to what it was like, what happened, and how it is now. Experience, strength, and hope. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope is his powerlessness of his step one. He then accepted the plan outlined in the book, highlighted, starred, circled, big notification on that in my book. And then when you go to the next story, the same thing. It's laid out what it was like, what happened, what is like now, only he's got physical rehabilitation in there, which we describe now as detox. And you know, hiding in a deserted barn. He was trying to find every other way to go and die, but he had deemed himself hopeless and had a step one. But the minute he was sold on the ideas in this book, he became willing. He found willingness. And after that, he got sober. So let's open this last page up for discussion on that there is a solution when we share our experience, strength, and hope. Marianne.
Hi, I'm Marianne. I'm an alcoholic. The first part that we read when the doctor said, you know, I had talked to this person was like completely hopeless and had all of these problems, and all of a sudden I am now talking to him and he is a completely different person. I feel that's that psychic change. You know, when people will say to you, oh, you're totally different than the way you came in here. And I know some people that are still the same way when they came in. They're not drinking, but they're not happy. So this psychic change to me is very important because it makes us into these people that people don't recognize anymore. Thank you.
Absolutely, it does. Charlene.
I just wanted the part where he accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me. It reminds me again of, you know, coming into AA and being this wreck of a person, a mess, can't even recognize my own self in the mirror, and people just with open arms, you know, welcoming me in, and it really for the first time, I think, in a while, it's really hit me that I miss my family. I miss my home group. I miss my people. And, you know, I'm over a year sober now, and I've just last night talking, a lot of people reached out to me and they said, wow, like, you're doing great. I'm so proud of you. Like, look how amazing you look how amazing you're doing. And it's just so important to hear that and to know that, you know, this works if you work it, and that this whole these last 2 pages just gives me so much hope, and it gave me goosebumps, you know, just, I can't believe that it's taking me this long to go through this, but everything happens for a reason, and it's all God led. So I'm just so grateful and thankful. And you guys are my new family, this group, and then my new home group, you know, out of BC there with Kim. But yeah, just make sure, I think the message here is it's important to let people know that you have open arms for them exactly as they are in this moment, and just to remind them along the way, you know what, you're doing well, you're doing good. Look what an amazing job you're doing in this recovered life.
Well, that's just it. We need to go through our experiences in order to learn the lessons and share them with others. I was never read the doctor's opinion my first 2 and a bit years in recovery. And so I didn't know what theology was, but man, did my life change when I was read that chapter of the book. Faith K. You got to hit unmute. Faith? There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi.
I'm relaxing on the couch. Usually I'm like running to and fro and flipping my picture on and off. I just want to say, Charlene, all the way from Indianapolis, your strength reaches me. I've watched you share. I know you've recently moved, and I just want to tell you I'm so proud of you. And for another woman in recovery to just be choosing the sanity that this recovery will bring us, it's empowering. I've been in your position, and I'll tell you, it's so much clearer on the other side. And the thing that someone else has shared was the happiness, right? You're sober now, but what do you have to offer? Anyone. Being sober is great, but if you can't do it without, if you have it without happiness, there's no attraction to that. And this is a program of attraction, not promotion. The God line, I see it here in this, and it says here, he had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage. That's pretty deep. And seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. You know, I think of that wet brain, you know, he had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. And like, that is the line that, in my opinion, no one can get me to cross over me. No one can get me to cross over except for God. And someone shared something very important. When I first got sober, I was seeing people that drank like I drank, and God, I wanted to drink, but I didn't. But I would go ahead and I would be like, da 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 da. And, you know, one of them never came back, you know, and she's still alive. And, you know, we do the geographical cure, but someone shared faith. If someone is not ready, there is absolutely nothing you can do to make them ready. That is God's line, and only God can pull them across. And choosing to step in and try to play God in another alcoholic's life can kill them. And I had to understand that I am not that powerful to make somebody pissed, happy, or sober. And as a sponsor, it has been huge. And I'll stop with this. That God line is something I cannot cross. And it shows here with this, like, no one pulled him into there. He had to be at that bottom by himself. And that looks like however it looks like. And Kimberly, I love all that you accomplish. I see you, honey, telling them babies to get out of here. You better tell them. But I love it because it's worth the sobriety and the sanity, you know, and because we're sober, we get to be here and be present and be active members of service. Thank you. That's all I got. I love you guys. Thank you. Bring me so much strength, by the way.
Thank you so much, Faith. And with that, we conclude the doctor's opinion. And when we come back next time, we are going to move on to my favorite, Bill's story.